This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
It is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, finally take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets as the season approaches with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I am in Foxborough. Greg is joining us from Parts Unknown. We'll go old school wrestling, old school WWF style, Parts Unknown during this podcast. But he is good. He is good. Nobody's holding him hostage. He's fine. Let's start outside of the Patriots, Greg. Obviously, yesterday, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. Yesterday was just a huge day in Boston sports. You had the Bruins and free agency, which we'll get to in a minute. But you had the Celtics. They get the extension done with Derek White. They get the extension done with Jason Tatum. But the biggest news might have been Wyc Grousbeck putting the team up for sale. What were your thoughts when I text you that, other than what?
Well, I'll say this after digesting it and sort of, reading some of the opinions or, takes on the subject where, obviously, Corrales at our place and other places and other writers. I'll just say that, look, I've always had a lot of respect for Wyc. I have a lot of confidence in Wyc. That they announced it like this, to me, I'm hoping that it's going to be that they already know what they're going to do. Like it's going to be the other partners, like Pagliuca, other partners that have been part of it, that they're going to step up, or Wyc has a guy who he's known for years that is similar. Like I would be very disappointed and I would be surprised if this was a situation where Wyc was looking for every last dollar. I do think the Celtics are important to him. I think his legacy as a great team owner is important to him. It should be. He's basically, since him and his partners have owned the Celtics, they've always been near the top. They've won 2 championships. They've always spent. That hasn't been an issue, unlike some of the other owners in this town. At the end of the day, I think Wyc looks at, and I think he's, they've set the Celtics up for success long term. I think this is all on purpose, that the timing of it is we've got basically all the pieces locked up for multiple years. We can make a run. And I think it's important to his legacy that he sells it to the right people to continue that tradition, and that it enhances his legacy going forward. Because if let's say he sold the Celtics a majority to, some investment banker outfit or something like that was like, just looking to maximize every last dollar, and then the Celtics went in the toilet, that would hurt his legacy. And I think he's carefully crafted it. I think he's been great in every single way. He's the owner that I respect the most in this town in terms of, everything that he does. And so, it's a little bit frightening, but I'm hopeful that there's a plan and that Wyc's going to execute it.
Best owner in Boston right now. I'm sure many people would say that. And I think those people would be right in saying that. You look at what he's done, the money that he has spent. He's not a guy who has a ton of money compared to other owners, relatively speaking. He has a lot of money for me. He has a lot of money for Greg. He has a lot of money compared to many of you, but he's not this, super duper uber billionaire who is just raking in the cash. And the NBA is getting more difficult to own a basketball team given the money. The local cable networks are not making as much money as they used to. The taxes, the penalties, just the idea of paying hundreds of millions of dollars on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars you're paying for the actual roster. They don't have the arena, as we know. You got TD Garden. They don't own that arena. So there's all of these different elements that make it more difficult for Wyc to continue to own the team, I think, the way he wants to own the team, which is put money in, continue to win, and do everything you have to do to make that happen. And I think Wyc, when you look at this realistically, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to own the team in that way with the lack of funds that he has compared to other guys in the league. And you saw this, Mark Cuban decided to sell in Dallas, and, Taylor in Minnesota trying to sell the team, and Charlotte sold a team recently. Michael Jordan, right? MJ got out of it. So you're starting to see this around the league. I just think it's very difficult and very expensive for guys who might not have that kind of cash to continue to roll in the league. And I also think this is just a human psyche thing that's fascinating to me, Greg. The fear of the unknown. Wyc was great. He's been great. I believe he loves the Celtics. He was born in Worcester. He wanted to own this team. He's owned the team for now more than 2 decades. And we can love what he has done and respect and appreciate who he has been as an owner without freaking out what's going to happen in the future. We have no idea. Yes, it could end up going to somebody that doesn't give an ish. But I would say if you're buying an NBA team right now, you're buying an NBA team with the full understanding of what's going on in this league, and that's going to cost you a lot of money to run that organization. So everybody take a deep breath and stop fearing the unknown. We don't know who's going to be the next owner. All right, we also had a big day with the Bruins, and I know you're a gigantic hockey guy. Greg Pucks Bedard on call here, and the Bruins made 2 big moves. So they sign Elias Lindholm. They bring in Nikita Zadorov, a defenseman. What'd you make of those moves?
Well, I think it's quite obvious that the Bruins, and we see this in every sport, but especially it seems like in hockey, that it's a copycat league, and we see it also in football and all that stuff. But you see what the Florida Panthers have done and how they've built it, and really the teams that the Bruins have struggled with in recent years, the bigger, stronger, on the forecheck, tougher teams, where the Bruins are built for the regular season. For the playoffs, they're not built quite as well. And I think they're trying to do things like, the Florida Panthers of the NHL. And I think, you look at, Zadorov is a big, strong guy, hits like a Mack truck. Lindholm is also big and tough and sort of a two-way defenseman, similar to Patrice Bergeron, but a little bit heavier on the forecheck. And I also think it's significant. I didn't realize this because I've been traveling, but, reading like Hags, what he wrote for us on the Bruins, I didn't realize that so many guys also, went out the door with DeBrusk and Heinen and Boquist and Grzelcyk. DeBrusk getting a 7-year deal from Vancouver. Dan Heinen's joining him out there. And I think, those guys are all smaller finesse type guys, and the Bruins are bringing in tougher guys. And I think that's what they have to do to try to keep up with the Florida Panthers of the world.
It was very interesting to me. I said this on the Sports Hub on Sunday afternoon when I was hosting. To me, the top priority was a top-line centerman, and obviously you address that with Lindholm. You can't play Morgan Geekie in a playoff series on the top line. I'm sorry, Morgan. I mean, we love what you do, but you're more of a third-line winger than you are a top-line center, especially in the postseason. So they addressed that. I thought, Greg, that their number 2 need was a wing. You lost DeBrusk. You lost Heinen. You're going to lose likely Van Riemsdyk. And I know Van Riemsdyk isn't huge, but he had double-digit goals for you last year. You start stacking up these goals, you're talking 50 goals or so that you lost. And yes, Lindholm will help you. You can move Zacha to the wing now. And you hope that Zadorov will help the defenseman step up offensively, and you'll get more out of McAvoy now, especially if you put Zadorov alongside him in the first pairing and let McAvoy kind of be McAvoy and skate and be a little more offensive if McAvoy just learns to actually pull the freaking trigger. And you can also move Lindholm back now, Hampus, and hopefully get more offense from him. But I thought that they should have gone wing over defenseman. And Jim Montgomery wants a big defenseman. He wants somebody who hits. That is obviously Zadorov. He picks up lots of penalties, so be ready for that. The overall aspect of this, though, is you're right. Big. They're looking for big, physical dudes. Guys that they've brought in are just big, and they're going to make you feel their presence. Lindholm, all three zones, wins at the face-off, right? He can win at the dot. He can help you in special teams. So I think Lindholm is good and fills that desperate need. But, Sweeney said after the season was over, we need scoring, and you really didn't address that in free agency. So now you're looking at Lysell, you're looking at Merkelov. These young guys, Patra, they're going to have to really step up and have, an impact with this team. It'll be interesting how Coach Montgomery deals with that. All right, let's get to the football now. Biggest news for the Patriots just came out this morning, a little while ago. Mike Reese's Pieces, along with Adam Schefter, had this. Jahlani Tavai signs a 3-year contract extension, Greg, 3 years, up to, two important words with every NFL contract, up to $21 million, but the base value is really $15 million. What's your take?
So I assume that would be basically like it's at the base, it's a 2-year deal, about $7.5 million. So I guess my initial response would be, look, I think that Jahlani Tavai has developed into a good, solid player. I think we talked about it in a recent podcast. Is his profile and Juwan Bentley's profile as sort of bigger, tougher, slower linebackers, is that the wisest course for this defense? And, it's really the heart of it. When you hear a lot of NFL people that say, you can tell the speed of the defense by the middle linebacker or the two linebackers. Nobody really plays with three linebackers anymore, but the two linebackers on the team. And, Bentley, he's fine. I think his speed is fine, especially early on in the season or first half of the season until he gets beat up a little bit because he plays so much. They do have Taki that can get in the mix and take some snaps from some of the guys. Tavai's a good leader. He's coming off an injury. We haven't seen him do anything in the offseason practices. Maybe he's doing stuff behind the scenes. Do I love that they're extending him before seeing him healthy? No, I don't like that because he's not old, but he's not young either. And so I would have waited on the deal. I would have seen how this defense develops, but maybe this is just the profile that they're going with. The Mayo, Covington defense, the scheme, they're just going to keep it going with what they have, and they're not looking to change a whole bunch on the second level. I would be more open to that. But again, outside of Taki, this is another position where we talked about, they didn't draft anybody. They haven't left themselves any other options. So really, locking up a guy, it's not huge money. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I just hope this doesn't close them off for being open-minded to getting faster and more athletic on the second level of the defense.
Yeah, I think they have those options. We'll see if Mapu can do anything. But you could always put Duggar in there. You could put Peppers in there, that hybrid role. You mentioned Taki. Look, Tavai's a good football player. He had his best season arguably last year. You're able to move him around a little bit. He was actually statistically, analytically good in coverage. So he's been able to kind of hold his ass in that aspect. And it's not back-breaking money. You've got a ton of space. And also, Greg, you kind of mentioned it there. A lot of people want the Patriots to wait. But the one thing I would say to that, though, is that in 2025, like next offseason, as of right now, you have a number of guys on that side of the football that are coming up. And unless they're going to re-sign everybody, you're going to have to make decisions. So you're not going to be able to fill every single void. You're going to use, I think, a number of draft picks in next year's draft to address the defense. And you got to hope that Chuks Okorafor works at left tackle, and maybe Jalen Polk looks like a one receiver, because you're also going to have to fill those two needs possibly with the draft next year. But the point is, you got a lot of dudes who are probably leaving this team on the defensive side, or at least a few of them. So Tavai is a player that they feel comfortable with. I would also imagine that he's pretty healthy. I know that Jerod Mayo said that he's been banging down the door to get out there. So I'd have to imagine the Patriots are very comfortable with where he's at from a health standpoint. Of course, they could be wrong, and that would be bad. But that's how I feel. We got some more thoughts on a lot of other things. But first, let's take this quick break.
Who doesn't love going to an MLB game during the summer, especially with the Red Sox turning things around? The ballpark has always been home to me and my family, and we'll definitely get there at some point, and we'll use Game Time to get us there. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I got to tell you, I've been on the app. I buy tickets. We're going to go to a Red Sox game, I think in a couple weeks. I went through Game Time. I love how you can see the views from all the seats in the venue. That, especially at Fenway with obstructed view and all that stuff, that's a must for me. I need to know where I'm sitting. I need to know what the view is. I don't want to be, pointed towards center field when everything's going on my right and have to be in traction for the next week. So I love the Game Time app for giving me that view because I have to have it. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Let's keep on moving with the defensive free agents. I just mentioned this. You got a number of guys, Greg, that are going to be free agents next year, but you also have a few guys that were on this team last year that are still free agents. Adrian Phillips, Laurence Guy, J.C. Jackson, they're still out there. They're still available. Do you have interest in any of those three?
Certainly the first two, Adrian Phillips and Laurence Guy, love, total pros. Definitely on the back nine of their career. Adrian Phillips saw his role sort of, diminish big time last year, and they have Mapu and they have Peppers, and they have Duggar, and they have all these guys. We'll see if Bledsoe makes the roster. I love Phillips, but I don't see any need for him. I don't think he wants to come back here. I think he would rather have a chance to win and have a slightly bigger role on a team. I could see him ending up on Baltimore Ravens or somebody like that, or even maybe him going back to the Chargers where he started his career. I could see Harbaugh really liking him as his profile. Laurence Guy, I think that's more of a situation where, we went through the contract thing with him last year. The Patriots didn't do anything. I think it's a situation where Laurence Guy looks at it and says, doing what I do at my age and the pounding that I take, is it worth, like the $3 million that he made last year? And is anybody going to give him more than that? Probably not. Could it get to the point where towards the end of training camp, if they're a little thin on the interior, if they're having contract issues with Devon Godchow, could they decide to bring him back? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be at very much money. And that is that worth Lawrence's while to do that? J.C. Jackson is probably the most interesting guy. Really struggled last year when the Patriots traded for him. Mayo has made comments, I think it was at the owners' meetings, about how that had a lot to do with injuries with J.C. Jackson. When he's right, he's still pretty good. That's going to have to be a Mayo call in terms of his comfort, but we all know the Patriots are a little thin at cornerback. Maybe this is a situation where both sides know they might make something work, but JC doesn't want to go through the offseason stuff, maybe even part of training camp, that sort of thing. So, I would, at this point, if JC Jackson is healthy, I'd rather go that route than, say, a Stephon Gilmore. But I think JC Jackson is the most interesting guy for sure.
They might be still looking at Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden, Marco Wilson, trying to see what they have in those guys. Could they bring more than Jackson brings to the table? The other question about Jackson is Mayo and Wolf have talked an awful lot about culture and character and getting the right guys and having the right feel in the locker room. And, of course, we know JC has not always been with the program, right? He's been a guy that's colored outside the lines from time to time. So are they concerned about JC causing a little bit of an issue in the locker room? We don't know, but there's that question that has to be brought up given his history. So that is something else that could be an obstacle in bringing JC back. But if you've got somebody like Austin and he does not show out, Bolden doesn't show out, they don't play as well as they looked like they were playing at minicamp, you could always reevaluate, and I would imagine Elliott Wolf would do so. Speaking of, minicamp, we saw the Patriots. They had practices a little bit later in the day. That's going to continue at training camp. Mayo is going to start practices at 11 a.m. instead of 9:30 a.m. I saw Mike Reese write about this over the weekend. It's obviously going to be hotter outside later in the day. What do you make of this decision by Mayo?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'm sure there's some sort of meeting aspect of it. I mean, normally most teams, and maybe this is a way to sort of shorten the day under Belichick and some of Belichick's assistants like, Josh McDaniels, they were known for their really, really long days. If you're practicing at 9:30, you're in by, stuff starts at 7 and you're going to 7, 8 o'clock at night. Now maybe they let the guys sleep in a little bit. Maybe it's 8 or 9 o'clock that they come in and do some stuff ahead of practice time. But I'm most worried about the heat. I don't really like I don't think it's better for your conditioning to be playing football in full pads at the top of the day where the heat's at its worst. I mean, some people will say, oh, it's better to work on conditioning. I don't really believe in that. I think that it can take some of the energy away from the players and it can be more of a problem. So, look, Mayo's a player. He's not too far removed from that. He obviously prefers this, but man, it's going to make for some really hot days down at Gillette Stadium.
Yeah, we'll see how guys react to it, right? You certainly don't want to put them in any kind of danger zone. You don't want to move it inside because that takes away some of the elements. So it's an interesting decision by Mayo. Obviously, he feels with maybe the little extra sleep or whatever they're going to do before practices at 11 a.m., it's worth it on the back end. He might end up being right. He might end up being wrong. We'll see how it all unfolds. This is his first camp as a head coach, and we'll see if he decides to change things. He always has the ability to do that. Will he do it? I find it unlikely, but certainly very interesting. Belichick had his way. Mayo's had his way. And in all of the conversation leading up to Bill Belichick being asked to leave the program and the Patriots filling Belichick's shoes with a quote-unquote Belichick guy, Greg and I talked about this an awful lot at the time. Just because you play for Bill Belichick and coach for Bill Belichick doesn't necessarily mean you are going to try to be Bill Belichick. McDaniels had some of that, of course. Patricia had some of that. But Mayo has done a lot of things differently than Bill did. And it could go great. It could go horribly wrong. We'll see which one it falls on. All right, so we did the coaches, executives with the most pressure on them in a prior podcast, Greg. Let's now look at some of the players that you have listed as far as pressure. And we start with the big guy in the middle on defense, and that's Christian Barmore.
Yeah, so this is number 5, Christian Barmore for me. He could be a little bit higher on the list. To me, this is all about the contract that he received, the contract extension. Some might say it's a little early for him. Some are worried about his knee and, whether there's a long-term thing there. There's also the added sort of pressure for Christian if he buys into it, like just in the locker room, that there are guys who have reacted to his contract extension, look at him and say, yeah, the kid's talented, but he hasn't really done anything. Whereas, I've been in the league 7, 8 years. I've done a lot for this team and, they're not giving me money. And I'm talking about guys like Devon Godchow, Matthew Judon. If they don't do anything to the contracts for those guys, now all of a sudden, it becomes an interesting locker room dynamic between the guys. And I'm sure a lot of people would be like, oh, that's overblown. These guys are professionals. That stuff goes on, all the time. And we don't know whether anything's going to happen, but, to me, the bottom line is, Christian Barmore after the contract, the reaction to some of his teammates, to me, there's pressure on him to deliver this year. And, so that's why I have him on the list.
Has to be an impact guy. He's getting paid like an impact guy after this season, got that extension. He was fantastic the last 2 months of 23. When you kind of draw up this defense, we all know this team has to be led by its defense. I think you're going to see a lot of run game and defense in 2024. And, Barmore is a big part of that defensive equation. If he can impact games the way he did in the final 2 months of last year, you've got Judon coming off of the edge. It helps Judon because you can't necessarily double him. It'll help guys like Joshua Uche and Keon White get to the quarterback. It should help Devon Godchow as well, because every single double team that Barmore forces the offensive line to partake in is good news for the defense. So Barmore is going to be a guy they lean on, and he's got to be ready physically. He's got to be ready mentally to be that kind of guy we saw the last 8 weeks of last season, this entire season in 2024. We'll see if he can do it. Jonathan Jones, contract year, going to be 32 years old next season. Greg, your thoughts on JJ?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple things in terms of the pressure on him. He's made a decent amount in his career, but he's going to have one more swipe at it. Sometimes cornerbacks age well, or they can transition to, safety and other things. So he's had some injury-plagued seasons. He sort of needs to ball out this year if he wants one more bite at the contract apple. So there's a lot of pressure from that aspect, but also just from a team aspect, like they need Jonathan Jones to play well. We've talked about it. Cornerback is one of those positions that's thin. Are they going to have him on the outside where we've seen him get picked on? Is he going to start as the two cornerbacks, and then when they go to three cornerbacks, when they go to nickel, is he going to go inside? Is he still an impact slot cornerback? Slot cornerbacks get paid even if they're older. But I think, for this defense to be good and for this team to be good, they have to play man-to-man. We know Christian Gonzalez can. Can Jonathan Jones still do that? Can Marcus Jones? Can Alex Austin? Can all these guys do that? And it starts with Jonathan Jones because a lot of things sort of work off of him in terms of the depth at cornerback.
We got our final three as far as players with the most pressure on them, according to Greg Bedard. We'll get to those final three in a minute. But I did want to mention this. I was at Monday Night Raw last night at TD Garden with Kelly, and I was at the bar, shocker, getting a beer with Kel. And as I was standing there, somebody by the name of Luke came up to me and introduced himself and said that he listens to the podcast. He's a fan and all of that. And I thanked Luke. He's a hardcore football guy. But I will say this. I don't know if this happens to you, Greg. I felt a little distracted in the moment, and maybe I wasn't as conversational as I should have been with Luke. The conversation was pretty quick. So if Luke is listening or watching, I really appreciate it, man. We thank you. We thank everybody who supports this podcast. And next time I will be a little bit more honed in and less worried about being next up in line and trying to figure out where our seats are right before the show starts. So
yeah, that definitely happened. That definitely happened because sometimes sometimes we forget because, we're not the Michael Felgers of the world. And, we forget that we're sort of public figures and people know us. And sometimes you forget about that like you're at an event. Like I saw a bunch of people. I went to Hootie and the Blowfish at Fenway with the fam. I'm a big Hootie fan from way back in the day. Like I saw them at 5 Points in Columbia, South Carolina before they hit it big, and had a great time. And there were a bunch of people in my section that knew me and were, asking me about my predictions for the season and stuff like that. So that was cool. But sometimes you're not in the right mindset and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. And also there was a guy at Tasty Burger who shouted me out. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Luke, I don't know if you're even listening to this or watching this. If you are, you know who you are. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your support. And so does Greg. All right, let's get to the top three on your list, Greg, as far as players with the most pressure. Number 3, you've got KJ Osborn.
Yeah, this was sort of their quote-unquote big addition from the outside on an offense that obviously was not good last year. So, KJ is who he is. Maybe this is more pressure on Elliot Wolf and the front office because they sort of identified him as sort of a mid-tier free agent that maybe the analytics really liked and have some upside here. But with Kendrick Bourne, we don't know what's going to go on with him. We don't know when the rookies are going to hit. Are they going to be able to play right away? Are they ready for the NFL? KJ Osborn has been a productive guy in a really good offense in Minnesota. they had Justin Jefferson and then Jordan Addison. And so he went down the pecking order a little bit, but that's, those are 2 first-round rare talents at the receiver position. So he sort of took a medium deal for the Patriots. If he can come in here and really be high impact and show that he can be a really good number 2 in this league, he could set himself up for life. But so in terms of future and his contract, but also this team this year, this offense, they need KJ to produce.
Yeah, I love the KJ Osborn one. We both really like Jalen Polk. We both believe he's an NFL receiver. He'll contribute in his rookie season, but you don't want to ask him to be the guy in this offense right off the bat. At least that's not a perfect scenario for you. So you have his part of this equation. You've got Javon Baker, who did not really take part in minicamp due to injury. So, where is Baker in his development? Is he going to be able to get on the field early this season? Kendrick Bourne's injury situation, is he going to start the year on PUP? What's going to happen with Bourne? It would be nice to walk into the year feeling like you've got Pop Douglas and at least one other guy that you can feel really good about contributing right away week 1, as high as we are on Jalen Polk. So Osborn could help that. He could be that guy to go along with Pop, and let's hope that he is. All right, we got 2 more, both on the offensive line. Let's begin at left tackle with Chuks Okorafor.
Yeah, so I think we all know the deal. A lot of people are underwhelmed at Okorafor and what Elliott Wolf has done at left tackle. But this is what's going to come down to this offense. Can they block it right? And it starts at left tackle. Internally, they have a lot of faith in Okorafor. They think they've really hit on somebody. Again, another similar to Osborn, more of a mid-tier guy that, in the right scheme with the right coaching, then this guy can be better than he's been so far this year. But they're risking a lot on this. And we're not just talking about the offense. We're talking about the future franchise and Drake May whenever he gets into the game. That's probably where the most pressure is for Okorafor, is if May plays, not to get the future of the franchise killed. And so there is going to be a lot of pressure on him to make sure that he performs to keep May safe. But there's no question that he needs to play really well if this team has a chance to compete.
Chuks is just gigantic to this football team if he actually does prove that he can be a starting left tackle in the league. Because if he proves that, now your offensive line is so much in a better spot. You don't have to worry about that left tackle position this year. It brings you some stability, but also it could have far-reaching implications, Greg, to the future of this team. As I mentioned just a little while ago, if this team does end up with a top 6, 7, 8 pick in the draft next year, if you have your left tackle figured out, if Chuks proves to be a starting player at that position, you now can do some other things with that top 10 pick in next year's draft. You might be able to look at a wide receiver. You might be able to look at, best player available on the defense. It gives you a lot of different flexibility, because I would imagine that they would pay Chuks if he proved to be that guy with all the cap space they have right now and going into next offseason. So he changes the dynamic, and he not only changes the dynamic for 2024, he changes that dynamic for maybe 2025, 26, 27, 28. So he is just huge when it comes to significance and importance for this football team this year and maybe moving forward. The number 1 guy on your list, another offensive lineman, you wrote about him last week talking to some sources, and that is, of course, Mike Onwenu.
Yeah, Nick, for me, this is all about the contract. I mean, he's getting paid $19 million a year. And when you agree to a contract like that, there is a certain level that is expected. And, is he going to be a right tackle? Is he going to be a right guard? If he's at right guard, he better be a damn good right guard, like he's been for the most part in his career. He better be in shape. Is he in shape? I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe he comes back to camp. Maybe he's in a little bit better shape. Does he stay on the field? Is he durable? Mike didn't ask for this. The Patriots handed him this money, but it's just the way it goes. You get paid $19 million a year as an offensive lineman. You are expected to be Pro Bowl, all pro level type guy. And so that comes with a lot of pressure. And, not only they're basically looking for him to lead this offensive line along with David Andrews this year. And for Onwenu, he's part of the future. He's got to be the guy that everybody looks to and be like, all right, nobody's getting past him. He's blocking at a high rate. He's doing his job. He's reliable. He's on the field. All those things come with the contract. He didn't ask for it, but that's just the business, man.
You go into this year and you're hoping that you have at least two guys on that O-line that you know about and that you feel confident about, and that's David Andrews and that's Onwenu. And if Onwenu, for whatever reason, whether it's a shape thing, a lack of love thing, or his play falls off for some unknown reason, man, that really affects this offensive line. And we just talked about Chuks. If Onwenu has a drop in play for any reason and Chuks doesn't show up on the left side, now you have a bit of a disaster because now you're banking on Calvin Anderson. You might be looking at someone like Layden Robinson playing right guard. You might be hoping for Cole Strange to get back so you can swing Sidy Sow back to right guard. There are so many questions about this O-line if Onwenu doesn't work out, and it's on him now. As you said, Greg, you got the money. You have high expectations now as far as your play with that money you're going to get. And, man, you got to make it happen because if you don't, it's going to be a mess. All right, I got one more question for Greg. But before we get to that question, I'll remind you this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download that app today. Use that code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. You can also check out Greg and Company at BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard, Giardi on the Patriots, Corrales on the Celtics, Hags on the Bruins. All sorts of coverage for you over there at BSJ. Just $50 for the year. Final question from me today, Greg. We talk about pressure on this team. We talk about pressure on the players. What about pressure on the quarterbacks?
Yeah. I figured you or somebody would ask, well, what about the quarterbacks? And the thing is I just think the bar's so low. They're just low for this offense in general. They have, new offensive coordinator, a lot of new coaches, new players. Jacoby Brissett, let's just take him, for example. Nobody really expects much of him. A lot of them are just waiting for Drake May to get his chance. So, really, as long as Jacoby plays efficiently and if he can keep this team around 500 a lot of the year, that's a success. If Jacoby Brissett's bad, I don't think anybody's really going to care. It's not going to be directed at Jacoby Brissett. It's going to be directed at Elliott Wolf for not trying harder to get a better veteran quarterback. And Drake May, I think everybody knows, considering the pre-draft dialogue about Drake May and, how he needs to work on a lot of things. Really anything that he does this year, as long as he's not a disaster, is sort of gravy. So I don't think there's any pressure on either of those guys right now.
The bar is so low, as you said. It's ridiculously low. The quarterback play was so bad last year. It's almost indescribable how bad the quarterback play was a year ago. I just can't fathom Brissett playing as badly as Mack and Bailey Zappi did. Could end up being wrong, but I also agree with you. If Brissett does play at that level, we're going to have much bigger issues to discuss than Jacoby Brissett. We're going to be looking at this situation and saying, man, Elliott Wolf really swung and missed at left tackle. Chuks Okorafor didn't work out. He gave an extension to Mike Onwenu. Onwenu didn't love football, or he wasn't the same player after that contract. That was a swing and a miss. You went out and you got KJ Osborn. That was great, but maybe you should have bent over backwards with Calvin Ridley or found some other way or been more aggressive trying to trade up. All of those questions will be brought back, even though I don't think all of them would be fair, but at least some of them would be. And it would be on Elliott Wolf and it would be on the rest of this team. Quarterback, unless you have a top-notch guy like a Patrick Mahomes, it's a very dependent position. And, you need the tools to be able to do the job at the level. So I agree with you. Not a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks this year. All right. He's Greg. I am Nick. We will talk to you soon. Be well. Enjoy your holiday, all that stuff. This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cavils.